you muck around with your saucers. I suggest go out and buy a couple of dozen saucers of different sizes. You muck around with your saucers so that your plant will use up that water in a week. If it doesn't use that water up in a week, your saucer's too big. Just by potting that plant to that size pot, you've doubled your size of the water available to the plant. So most people, when they pot up a plant and they go, say, from that size to that size, and they say it doesn't work, the plant didn't grow. Why should that be the case? Because if you put that into a garden, it's a really big one, isn't it? So why shouldn't it grow? The reason is that they put that size in that, but they keep watering it the same amount that needs. Yet it's got 20 times more water available to it in this size pot than it did this size. Alright, so your plant that needed watering every second day now has a big saucer underneath it, so it only needs watering once a week. This plant didn't need any saucer underneath it because it only needed watering once a week anyway, or a tiny little saucer. The other thing is, if you want to put the same size saucer under basically every plant to make it look nice and pretty, all you do is water the ones that the saucers are dry. So you might have 50 plants to water, but you only might be watering 10 of them every second day. Because all you do is go around and water the ones where the saucers are dry. So you water them from the top, so the water still comes down through the plant and out into the saucer, and then the plant then sucks the water back up into the potting mixer. Does that all make sense? Does that sound easier? Yeah. I like easy work. I like making garden easy. Same thing with your gardens outside. If you want to plant your ferns outside in a garden, great place for them, especially in this area. Most of the tropical plants still grow in this area. 70 to 80% of your water loss out of your gardens from evaporation. If your garden's underneath a gum tree, it'll take 70 to 80% of your water out of your garden. Good place to grow plants, good especially your ferns, because they hate having midday sun. They like up to 4 hours of morning sun and 2 hours afternoon sun. What time's the sun come up in summer? Yeah. Just around 4:30. So 4 hours of morning sun in summer is 8:30. They need to be out of the sun. What time does the sun go down in summer? 7. They need to be out of the sun until 5 o'clock in the afternoon in summer. In winter, you can have them in the sun until 11 o'clock in the morning. Or you can have them in the sun, from 3 o'clock in the afternoon. But as a rough rule of thumb, remember that, because that's where most people, make mistakes. The other thing, the northern side of the house, it's in the sun all day in winter. So the northern wall of the house is actually hotter in winter than it is the middle of summer. Because the sun comes up in the east in summer, it comes up in the northeast in winter. So you've got to keep those sorts of things in mind, so you want your ferns to stay out of the sun through the middle of the day basically. The biggest pest problem with your ferns are slugs, snails and grubs. Slugs and snails are really easy with a bit of slug and snail bait. Grubs, most of the insecticides knock them around, so they're pretty easy to use. On your insecticides, the things that make the aerosol can spray, the things that make them go squirt, that's the bit that hurts the ferns. Alright, it's the bit that makes it squirt. It's the propellant. They burn your ferns, not the actual insecticide. Most of the liquid insecticides, the bit that makes it the liquid, it's the bit that burns the ferns. So if you're having trouble with your insecticides burning your ferns, it's usually not the actual chemical makeup, it's what the chemicals are carrying with. So your powder chemicals are the best. Alright? Or some of them now, you read on the side it says it's basically mixed with water instead of a hydrocarbon. So with the wettable powders are the best for your ferns. Read the instructions, do what they say. When you repotting, so you want to repot this into a bigger pot, we've already worked out that the watering is going to change because we put that into this size pot. 4 inch 10 centimetre to a 17 centimetre. So that size into that size pot, that's about the biggest you want to go. Mind you, if we use a big plant, that looks bad, doesn't it? Because that's about the size you want to put up. So you've gone from there to there, you've now got about 4 or 5 times more water holding capacity. So we can cut back the amount of watering, but we know what we're doing with watering now. When you repipe, we have put a liquid, we haven't used any liquid fertiliser, we've put a slow release osmocote in here, and that's all we've done. So when we repipe, we put a slow release fertiliser in with potting mix. Now the idea, we mix it into the mix, but you guys aren't potting a couple of thousand at a time, I hope. Giving all my secrets away. When you repipe, fill the pot up to just below this mark here. So fill it up just below the size you're potting it. Put half your fertiliser, spread round at that level, because that's where your roots are at the bottom of this plant. So you put half the amount of measured fertiliser, because we all measure our fertiliser, don't we? We measure our fertiliser, don't we? So we put half of the measured fertiliser at that level, so the bottom of the root system. We then put the plant in and fill up about halfway. So about halfway up that pot around the plant, and then sprinkle the rest of the measured fertiliser around at that level. And then we fill it up to the top and put it in. The reason for that is, the bit below the root system, it won't get used because we're watering from the top and it's dragging the fertiliser down. Okay, so we keep the fertiliser at that level, so the fertiliser is all around the root system where the plant wants it, and it will gradually come down through the pot, so we're not wasting fertiliser coming out the bottom of the pot. We don't put it on top of the pot. One, when the dog kicks the pot over, the fertiliser falls off. But the other reason is a lot of the nitrogen in the fertiliser gets released to the atmosphere. So if you put it on top of the pot, a lot of the fertiliser gets wasted to the atmosphere. So when we're measuring it now, because it all gets used how we want it, you'll find that you only have to use the amount measured instead of half a handful, because you want it to be greener and growing faster.